Good morning. So today the title is The Illusion of Separation. The illusion of being separated from God, from each other, from everything. Yeah? Do you ever feel like all alone in the world? Like disconnected from everything? No. Never felt like that? When you were a teenager? Yeah. Are there people in the world who feel like this? Kind of disconnected and not sure who they are or what the purpose of life is? So it creates problems, doesn't it? It creates problems for the individuals, but also it creates problems for the world. Because people who are disconnected from who they are and disconnected from God, from each other, they can do pretty bad things. So, but actually, we are not separated. We are God's children. We come from God. God dwells in us. We are brothers and sisters. We're one family under God. This is our motto, isn't it? One family under God. And peace starts with me. So God dwells in us, and God wants to see a world that is peaceful, filled with love, and where we all can be together as one united family. But if we look at the world today, there's a war going on in Ukraine. So why is that? Because of divisions, because of people feel separate. So, for example, Putin, he feels threatened by the West. He feels different. He wants to reclaim, his kind of Russian homeland. So it's this idea that you're not my brother or sister, but you're different, and I am better than you. And so this division creates all kinds of problems. You could talk about China. China wants to assert its kind of world power. It wants to have domination. Why? Because Chinese are special. Chinese are different. And so conflicts happen in the world because, well, that's my land, not your land. It belongs to me. So you can have conflicts within yourself, conflicts between people in families, between nations, between religions, between different ethnic groups. And so we see that the history of the world is full of divisions because people feel separate. They don't see each other through God's eyes, but they see that you're a threat to me, or you are different from me. And therefore I judge you, or I feel superior to you, I feel inferior to you. So this is the world. That's why we need to come back to God and to know that the only way to come together is to see the reality of life, not the illusion of being different and separate. So this picture kind of represents this feeling of isolation. All alone, separated from everything. So if you see that picture, if you saw somebody standing there, you'd probably maybe feel, oh, they look so alone. Maybe they're sad and separated from the world. So what does the divine principle teach us? The divine principle teaches us three parts. First of all, there's the ideal. The ideal, the kingdom of heaven on earth, where God dwells in each one of us. Then there's a oneness. There's no separation. We're all united. Yeah? But through the fall, that's where the separation occurred. Separation between Adam and Eve and God. Separation between Adam and Eve, separation between Cain and Abel. So it's from the fall we lost our connection to God, but that connection to God led to separation between people and divisions. But the third part of the principle is restoration. Restoration is reconnecting to our divine source, reconnecting to who we really are, and recognizing that we're all children of God. So this is the three parts of the principle. So I'd like to begin with the ideal of oneness. So if you, this idea that everything is just one, there's no separation. So when I look at you and you look at me, then if we're all individuals, we're all unique, but behind that uniqueness, we're all God's children. We all have the same desires and the same longings. Actually, we come from the same source. We can recognize the beauty of each individual, but actually what's more important is not our differences, but what we have in common. So, Father's work when he was on this earth, most of the resources of our movement went into interfaith work. And the book we have called World Scripture, that is showing that actually most of what the religions believe in is the same. So we're not here to say everybody join our movement. We can say everybody join us in our efforts to bring unity and to see what we have in common, not what is different. So if you look into the divine principle, I was searching where in the divine principle is there like an explanation that actually we are really one. So in the divine principle, I would say everything is a manifestation of God. So this is what it says: the universe is composed of individual embodiments of truth, each a unique manifestation of the dual characteristics of God at either the level of image or of symbol. I'll read it again because I read this many times to try to get to the essence of it. The universe is composed of individual embodiments of truth. In the first translation of the principle, it says truth, embodiments of truth. I've lost the word now. They were truth bodies, yes, thank you. Truth body, which means each individual, whether it's humans or whether it's nature and the different levels of nature, is composed of the same things, these dual characteristics. So the dual characteristics are internal nature and external form. And so we understand that God is both a God of heart, internal, but also external form. The energy that creates everything comes from God's external form. And that God is both masculine and feminine. And that's why by looking at creation we learn about God, and by looking at creation we realize that each of us is an embodiment of these dual characteristics. So therefore we can say, yeah, we're all one. Because we're all a manifestation of God, we're all one. We are exactly like God because God created us human beings in his image, and he created the creation as symbols. But it's all God. We're the stuff of God. We didn't come from anywhere else. So we are God. We are God manifested, because Father in the Chong Song Gong book, many times he says that God wanted to manifest in this physical world, because without a physical form, he cannot have direct interaction with the physical world. And so we are the embodiments of God. We are God. Is that blasphemy? Is it blasphemy to say, I am God? No.
Too much responsibility.
Yes. Okay, so the next thing is that, we can say that within the rock, within the rose, and within that bird, it's the same dual characteristics, but on different levels. And we read this in the principle, so I won't go into detail. But another aspect is this. Ideal human beings receive stimulation from the world of nature, sensing their own internal nature and external form displayed throughout the creation. They feel immense joy. So by looking at a rock, by looking at a rose, or by looking at a bird, we can feel something within that's within us, because we're made of the same stuff. Actually, we're a microcosm of everything. So all the elements in a rock, in a rose, in a bird are within us, both internal and external. So a rock is very strong. So it represents something about like something internal strength within us. but it's also made up of molecules and atoms as we are. Yeah. But there's another man who's a famous man. He also expressed something about this, and this is Eckhart Tolle. You know Eckhart Tolle? Never heard of him. Okay. Well, he had some transforming experience when he was younger, where he really felt the presence of God and a oneness with everything. And he's written many books, and his most famous book is The Power of Now. And it's in the now you can experience God. You can experience his oneness. And he said this: underneath the surface appearance, everything is not only connected with everything else, but also with the source of all life out of which it came. Even a stone, and more easily a flower or a bird, could show you the way back to God, to the source, to yourself, because you recognize within that something about yourself. It stimulates the same qualities in yourself. And he goes on to say, when you look at it, a stone, or hold it and let it be without imposing a word or mental label on it, a sense of awe, of wonder arises within you. Its essence silently communicates to you and reflects your own essence back to you, your own essence. So even if you hold a rock, if you just look at it, you can feel something within that rock that stimulates something within yourself. Recently, because I've been studying, I'm looking at these leaves on a tree, the beautiful leaves. It resonates something within me. Yeah, because the tree is a part of me. I'm a part of the tree. And if we look at this picture, beautiful picture. This is somewhere in Sweden. I think where we live, actually we're quite close to Lake Mälaren, and it looks very similar. It could be. So who likes to walk in nature? So why is that? What's going on? You're receiving something, aren't you? It's like you're resonating. There's something in nature that resonates with you, stimulates something in you. So, there's a purity. So we have purity within us, and it stimulates that purity. If you look at the colors, the blue sky makes me feel calm. And the cool waters, and the green trees. In these the chakras, the heart chakra is green. Did you know that? So I think that's why God made grass green and trees green leaves, because it's like it resonates with your heart. And if you look at a tree, a tall tree is growing up, and I look at that tree and I can feel like the tree that I'm sort of reaching up to something better. Or a tree has roots, so I feel like a tree, solid. Yeah. And then the leaves, they're blowing in the wind. Sometimes I can feel like a tree, it's like, I suppose artists, what they do is they're connecting to something within, but they're painting pictures of nature which resonate with them, brings them joy. And of course, from an external viewpoint, the air we breathe sustains us. The light from the sun warms us, and the water, gives us life. So we are actually one with nature, and that's why we love to go out into nature. So that's the first thing. So the next thing is that according to Father's words, everything is based on love. Everything. And he says this: all things of creation, including the mineral and plant kingdoms, came into existence through a relationship between a subject partner and an object partner based on love. Love started the universe and is connected to everything in the universe. Everything is interlinked with true love at the center. That is how God created the world to be. So it's the energy of love which brings everything together. And he talks about, what came first, energy or existence. But actually, it's the relationship between subject and object that creates energy. Energy just didn't come about from nowhere. It's a relationship. So everything is based upon relationship. And that's to do with love, because relationship is like giving and receiving. So wherever there is a relationship of giving and receiving, that's where love is, that's where God dwells. And if we look at this beautiful picture, there's a subject and object. I don't know if you consider the flower the subject or the butterfly. Maybe the butterfly, because he's moving around, he's initiating. But it's like the flower opens up and reveals its beauty. And the butterfly is showing love. And of course they're having a give and take. Beautiful. So these two things, if we look at deers, these two things I want to emphasize is that everything is a manifestation of God. So, deers have both an instinct and a physical body. They're both male and female. And everything is based upon love. If you look at those animals, can you see yourself in them? Because it's like something very cute and very kind of strong and gentle, something pure, innocent. So when you look at nature, because they are a manifestation of God, I feel myself in them. It stimulates something inside of me. And also I feel a lot of love for them. And what about this? What about human beings? Everything is a manifestation of God. Everything is based upon love. The first picture, there are 5 generations. Can you imagine? And what you see in their smiling faces? Love. They're all united. They're all expressions of God. And it's all based upon love. And on the other picture, there are 4 generations. And it's the same thing. Beautiful. Each person there is a manifestation of God. And each person there, their relationship is based upon love. And what about our physical body? We're individuals, but actually that physical body, did you know that there are 37 trillion cells within our body? That's what scientists have kind of estimate. Don't know how they do it. I think it's to do with weight. I don't know what it is, but so if you look here, on the left-hand side, we're all covered by skin to protect our body. But then we have the skeleton, and then we have the lungs and breathing. We have the muscles. We have the digestive system, the cardiovascular system, and then the nervous system. But it all works together as one. And I suppose if we're sick, something's not quite in balance. But the human body is an example of oneness. 37 trillion cells all working together right now, at this moment. Isn't it amazing? So imagine if they didn't work together, you'd be a mess. But actually God created everything through this subject-object relationship. So all these relationships are based upon love. So that's the ideal. But what about the fall? Separation. So here we are. Human beings and God. Like in this picture, there's a big gap, and this person cannot get there, otherwise he'll fall down. He can't reach God. Do you feel separated from God? Sometimes, all the time? Oh, I mean, many people don't believe in God because, well, where is he? I can't see him. Well, if he's, if he's real, then where is he? So, this is what Father said. He said here, until now, through Christianity, we have placed God so high in heaven and pushed people so low in hell that there has been an unbridgeable gap between us. We have been unable to realize that God is so close, so real, and so approachable. So, Christianity, Jesus, he said, if you've seen me, you've seen God. Yes, I am in the Father is in me. But then that was blasphemy, terrible person. Yeah, how can he do this? He's blasphemous. So I suppose in Christianity, then this feeling of being separate, in one sense, is made worse. Because it's like, well, I'm a sinner, yeah, and I'm far away from God, and okay, so Jesus is the mediator, so I need him to come back to God, but basically I'm a sinner. I don't think that's a very helpful way to think about our divinity and our value. Of course, did Jesus come to judge us? You could say, well, yeah, and the word does judge us, but his purpose was to show us the way to God as a mediator. I look back to my childhood, and I've said many times I benefited from school, because in those days, in primary school, every day began with an act of worship. It was in the 1944 Education Act. So we sang Christian hymns, we recited the Lord's Prayer, and we got a message. At lunchtime we said a prayer. At the end of the day, the teacher said a prayer. So you could say that I got a good foundation, but at the same time, within Christianity, within my school situation, there was a lot of judgment, right? So I remember one time at the end of the day when we had to put our chairs up, our hands together, close our eyes, and the teacher said some final prayer, and I was kind of just mouthing or pulling faces with my eyes closed, but other children had their eyes open and they found what I was doing was funny. So when the teacher wondered what was going on, I was at fault, and I think I got the cane on my hands or something. I'd done nothing wrong. So in those days you would get the cane. Same in Sweden, I think, once upon a time. Yeah. So you might say, yes, come on, beat the bad out of him, But I mean, it's like this concept of punishment is also embedded in Christianity. It's interesting because years ago, in 1991, I went to a 40-day workshop with Reverend Arn, with Hans Futsch and Jan Peter. And I remember we used to have to write down things, and he said, where there is sin, there is punishment. Where there is punishment, there is sin. And ever reflect upon that now. Okay, yeah, I suppose so. If you do something wrong, you have to suffer the consequences. But it's like pretty dark. And I feel if we emphasize what's wrong with us, it increases the feeling of separation. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. And it's also easy then to judge others. They're different. Well, what about our movement? When I joined our movement, I found the Messiah. Now I'm in the chosen people. And then it's very easy to judge people who are not the chosen people. Yes? And I suppose that's the same for all religions. Yeah? Yeah, we're the best. Yeah. If you're not saved by Jesus, or you don't get the blessing from true parents, well, what's your future? But I'm going to heaven because I got the blessing. Yeah. I'm not speaking against the blessing and the understanding we've gained, but because we're fallen people, we have a tendency to judge and think we're better or worse. I mean, people who leave our movement, they can blame the movement for all kinds of mistakes. But I don't see it like that. I see it's how we perceive reality. Because we know you should forgive people's mistakes. You shouldn't judge people. So if you judge others, it's a reflection of yourself. So this feeling of separation is because you're not thinking the way God thinks. So what's missing is really a separation from God's love. If we felt God's love, we wouldn't judge others. So, I mean, maybe we shouldn't use the word God, we should use the word love. God is a God of unconditional love. The word God creates certain concepts. For some people, God is a God of judgment. Yeah? You'll be judged by God. Or God is somehow distant, he's far away. But if we consider God is love, unconditional love, and a parent, then actually this is what we want. We want to feel God's love. And if we don't feel God's love, then it's easy to kind of not feel good about ourselves and then to see what's wrong with others. So it's interesting because being a teacher, The children in the school who are problems are those who are not loved. They're seeking attention. Yeah, they're coming from a family where they couldn't get the love they want, and they cause problems because they want to be recognized. So if we're filled with love, we don't need to accuse anybody else, because then we can see everybody through God's eyes, that everybody is valuable. So even if we take Putin, right, some people say he's a crazy man, but actually he is God's child. Can you look at him through God's eyes, or do we judge him? Yeah. What did Jesus do when he was on the cross? He said, Father, forgive them. They know what they do. So I suppose behind all of this is, what do you think this represents?
Ignorance.
Exactly, ignorance. That's why through history God has been revealing deeper and deeper truth. So in the time of Jesus, it was very much, the word, and you'll be judged by the word. But at the time when Jesus came, he talked about forgiveness and love. And in our time, our understanding of God is a God who's a parent, and God isn't just love, but God has a heart, and God can feel pain just like us. And God needs us. God is not far away. God needs us. To fulfill God's ideal, he absolutely needs us. We're essential. And I suppose when I joined the church, the divine principle, because it says, we need a new expression of truth. And so we need something more rational and logical. We need answers to questions that Christians are divided over. And so I think the divine principle clarifies many things. But is the divine principle the ultimate truth?
It's an expression.
Yes, it's an expression. So we shouldn't get stuck on the principle, actually, in Father's words and think, well, there's nothing more, that's it. I don't want to hear anything else. Doesn't God work? Doesn't God continue to work? The divine principle is not a science book. But science is revealing that actually we're all connected because there's energy everywhere. Yeah, we're all energy. So quantum physics is showing like there is a reality beyond this one which the divine principle can't explain, because divine principle is not a science book. So I think it's also important we don't think, well, this is the final truth and there's nothing else. That's why I get inspired by all kinds of books, by inspired people who are giving, for me, it gives more and more insights into the truth of the principle. And maybe there are some things which I can't understand in the principle, but can be clarified in another way, like this Eckhart Tolle. Oh, so this is why we need the truth. As Jesus said, the truth will set you free. And what do you think this represents? Maybe it represents you and me. I'm also confused. Well, this is inner conflict. Inner conflict is like, mind and body disunity, or we have an original nature that wants to do good, and we have a fallen nature which is pretty self-centered, and a fallen nature which is judging or kind of limited in our thinking. And as St. Paul said, with my mind I want to do the right thing, but I instead do the bad thing I don't want to do. So we're all kind of a bit mixed up, but that has a lot to do with ignorance. Yeah? And I was thinking, when I joined the church, what I was taught was there's Abel and there's Cain. So Abel is closer to God. And you have to unite with Abel, otherwise Satan will invade. Did you ever get that? Yeah. In the early days, I'm thinking, what is this? So I felt I couldn't say anything because I'm Cain. So if I disunite, then Satan invades. So I crazy. Yeah. So this can cause inner conflict, Or if I do wrong, I feel judged. Yeah. It's interesting because in my life, I would say there's a certain element of fear towards authority figures. I think it comes from the time I lived in, from the school, from my father, so, for example, in my job as a teacher, it was very hard for me to disagree with the principle, because I don't feel worthy enough, or I don't have the courage, or because I kind of put him up there, and I couldn't. And if I was told off for some reason, I feel very guilty. Yeah, and I'm thinking, where's this coming from? It's my concept, the illusion that somehow he knows it all and he's superior to me. What about in our movement? We had leaders, yeah, leaders. Now we have a core team. I think it's much better, kind of, you know. But we have leaders, and basically we're encouraged to unite. But what kind of unity? Of course, unity is where God works, but we shouldn't unite based upon fear or duty. We should unite because of love, because we want to support. And if you're a leader, you shouldn't demand unity. You should, through example, yeah. So if you serve somebody, that's a very good way for people to want to join you. So Jesus, he washed his disciples' feet, didn't he? That was a way to bring unity. And what about Father in prison? I remember when he was in Danbury, he was putting all the salt and pepper out very carefully. Or I think when he was in Hong Nam prison camp, you know, he was sleeping next to the toilet. He put himself in the lowest position. So I think our concepts, even in our movement, about, you know, our relationships should be based upon love. But coming from my background, and maybe the leaders of a church, coming from their background, bring their concepts. Yeah. Hopefully we have matured. Yeah. I left the church I'd been a member for about almost a year, but I joined too quickly. Yeah, I just needed a break, so I went to Dennis Orme and I said, you know, I'd have to have a little break. And he said, go to a 21-day workshop. No, I said, no, I just need a break. Yeah, and he got upset with me. He said, get out. You know, I thought, oh, that's really how to love a person. So I went away for 9 weeks because I didn't doubt the principle, but I just needed a break. But why did I come back? Well, actually, one reason I came back was a fear. Fear, one reason. Part of it was the truth. I believe this. The other one was fear. Like, well, if I don't come back, you know, Satan will get me or whatever. You know, this kind of confusion inside your head. But it's so easy to blame someone else. It's the church, you know. It's my boss. It's my wife. It's somebody else. But actually, it's this conflict within ourselves because we feel this separation from God and from our true identity. So, let's move on. Restoration is about reconnecting to who we really are. And so, I would like to give 4 examples of experiences of oneness. The first is a near-death experience. Secondly, messages from spirit world. Then animals and humans. And finally, the human connections. So let's start with a near-death experience. Because we're on this earth, right? And I think St. Paul said, you know, now you see through a glass darkly, but then you'll come face to face. So people who have near-death experiences, they realize, wow, you know, I had imagined certain things, but now I realize what reality is. And so, you know this person? Anita Moorjani. I would say the most famous dramatic experience of near death. She wrote this book called Dying to Be Me. And she was actually almost dead. Her organs were failing. She was in a coma. And then she left her body. And she had this experience. She says this: I became aware that we're all connected. This was not only every person and living creature, but the interwoven unification felt as though it were expanding outward to include everything in the universe, every human, animal, plant, insect, mountain, sea, inanimate object, and the cosmos. So she felt that everything is one. Not just me, but everything is one. We're all connected. And secondly, Yeah, I realize that the entire universe is alive and infused with consciousness, encompassing all of life and nature. Everything belongs to an infinite whole. I was intricately, inseparably enmeshed with all of life. This was her experience. But she had to die almost to experience it. Of course, she kind of did not feel worthy. She said, later she realized why she got cancer. Because she didn't feel good about herself. You know, she was living in Hong Kong, but her parents were from, I think, Sri Lanka, so she had Hindu parents. She lived in a country where Buddhism was practiced, but she went to a Christian school. And she was kind of trying to please everybody. But when she went to the spirit world, she realized, well, we're all one. There's no one better or worse than anybody else. We're all the same. So this was the first thing she experienced, that we're all connected. And then she says, we're all facets of that unity. We're all one, and each of us has an effect on the collective whole. So that's important. That we might, I'm insignificant, but we can affect the whole. But the next experience was this. I felt myself completely enveloped in a sea of unconditional love and acceptance. I was able to look at myself with fresh eyes, and I saw that I was a beautiful being of the universe. I understood that just the fact that I existed made me worthy of this tender regard rather than judgment. I don't need to do anything specific. I deserve to be loved simply because I existed, nothing more, nothing less. So God loves us simply because we exist. Of course, when Father talks about freedom, when you accomplish something, that's freedom. We want to achieve things and we feel some accomplishment. But actually, even if we don't achieve it, God still loves us. That's more important. And then she says this. This was a rather surprising realization for me, because I'd always thought I needed to work at being lovable. I believed that I somehow had to be deserving and worthy of being cared for. So it was incredible to realize this wasn't the case. I'm loved unconditionally for no other reason than simply because I exist. And that is God. That is God's love. God loves you, God loves me unconditionally. And no matter how many mistakes you've made, God still loves you. It's like a parent, isn't it? When children do bad things, of course you may get upset and you may feel sad and correct them, but you still love them. And the most important thing is that all the mistakes that children make, they need to know they're loved. It's the same with you. From your childhood, did you feel loved by your parents unconditionally? Through your life, have you always felt, I'm loved unconditionally? Your parents did the best they could, but actually, this is what we need. This is who we are. Next, I would like to look at some messages from Spirit World, from somebody who went to the Spirit World and is communicating from the Spirit World. And that is Dr. Wayne Dyer. And I spoke about him last time. And Dr. Wayne Dyer, he is a giant among spiritual leaders, and he's written almost 40 books. And he went to the Spirit World, and then he started communicating with this lady, Karin Noah, who's a psychic medium. And combining together, she wrote a book called We Consciousness, 33 Profound Truths for Inner and Outer Peace. So what he says is that he still exists and will continue to exist as an individual, but he's joined forces with other ascended masters like St. Francis of Assisi. And this We Consciousness is communicating 33 concepts about reality and who we are. And so I would like to quote 3 of them. First of all, the most important truth is that we are all one. Our oneness encompassing everything and everyone, including God, the angels, ascended masters, enlightened beings from other areas in the universe, deceased loved ones, animals, and nature. So, therefore, you could say we are one with everything. So angels are no better than us, or no worse than us. then we can also say God is no better than me or no worse than me because God is in me. Yeah? God doesn't want to feel separated. God doesn't want to sit on a throne, look down at us. Do we deserve to be there? But actually, God is one with us. God is part of us. So there's no separation. And then, second one, the true essence of who you are is God. To say it in a different way, God is within every one of us with no exceptions. No exceptions. God is in every single person. And because I was preparing for this sermon, as I'm walking along the street, I look at a person and say, God is within you. You have God's face. God's heart is within you. You're beautiful. So the beggar on the street is God. That old man with a walking stick or in a wheelchair is you. That little child is God. Because God's within every single human being. So nobody is more valuable or less valuable because everybody is of equal value. And third, it is imperative to love and respect yourself and understand that you're just as significant as everyone else. So if you don't love yourself, you're doing a disservice to God. Because God, your real identity is God within you. You have to love yourself. You can't be on the same vibration of God if you don't love yourself. You have to be like God. So this is very important. These three things. We're all one. Our essence is God, and we have to love ourselves and respect ourselves. Because we're just as significant as anybody else. And next, animals and humans. So this is a story about a dog, a collie dog called Bobby, and his owner Frank Brazier. And this is a story because there's a connection, this kind of oneness between animals and humans. How many of you here have a cat? How many of you have a dog? Who has another pet? Yeah. Huh?
Chinchilla.
A chinchilla, okay. And do you feel they're somehow one with you, united with you? My cat, he comes up to me and he puts his head right in front of my face, and he wants to be stroked. And then when I stroke him, he's purring, yes. And his eyes are closing, and it's like I couldn't identify with him, yes, because that's what I like. I like to be stroked. So here's an example of this oneness between a human and an animal. During the 1920s, a 2-year-old collie dog named Bobby became a national sensation. His owners, Mr. and Mrs. Frank Brazier, restaurant owners who lived in Silverton, Oregon, were vacationing in Indiana when Bobby got lost. Despite intense efforts to locate the dog, the Braziers finally despaired of finding him. Broken-hearted, they resumed their trip westward, never expecting to see him again. But 6 months later, Bobby showed up, emaciated, at the family restaurant in Oregon. He made his way up to the second floor living quarters and jumped on the bed, awakening Frank Brazier by licking his face. He became a national sensation. He got all kinds of awards and benefits. So, and then this here, here is a map of his journey, all the way from Indiana all the way to Silverton. It took him 6 months. It was mainly in the winter. And how do we know he took this route? Is because they investigated and people had sighted this dog. How is that possible? Well, studies of human and animal connections say it's always connected to love. So the energy of love was between them. Yeah? How could the dog find his way home? He felt something. Yeah? He was being drawn. He felt connected because love is beyond time and space, isn't it? So it came all the way home. Amazing. And then the final example is of human connections. This is Wesley Autry. And one day in New York, he was going to the metro, And he was standing on the platform with his two daughters. And then, when he was standing there, he saw this man, who's called Cameron Holopeter, and he was having a seizure. And during this seizure, he kind of stumbled and he fell onto the tracks. So Wesley immediately jumped onto the tracks to get him up. Yeah? But a train was coming, and he realized he didn't have time to get off. So what he did, there was like a little space underneath the tracks, and he pushed this man down. He lay on top of him, and the train went over him. Yes. Of course, the people on the platform saw what was going on, and the train, of course, stopped. But he survived. He survived. And he became a national hero. He was on TV and books were written about him, and, he got lots of money. And he asked, well, why did you do it? He said, well, it's just instinct. I just had to. But what was going on is because he could identify with that person. When he saw that person on the tracks, he felt this could be me. We're connected in heart. And so without thinking, he saved him. So there were 4 examples where we're all one. There's no separation because we identify in the other ourselves. So let's bring this to a conclusion. So there we are, 2 children. Can we say those children kind of have sin, and kind of they're fallen, they're separated from God? When you see children, you see purity and goodness. So I'm always want to emphasize the goodness of human beings. Not this separation and this kind of isolation, but the joy of life. God dwells in those 2 children. God wants to run around happily. So what did Jesus say? He said, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So if we understand the truth, it really sets us free. And these 2 things which I have mentioned, everything is a manifestation of God. Everything. You are a manifestation of God. I am. We are no different from God because everything that's within us comes from God. And secondly, everything is based on love. All our relationships, God created subject-object relationships. It's the energy of love that brings them together. So finally, we can say separation is an illusion. It's just in your mind. It's not true. So next time you feel isolated, go away, that's untrue. I know who I am. And finally, we can come to a situation, this picture, so we know who these 2 people are. Father meeting Kim Il-sung. Kim Il-sung was his enemy, wasn't he? So how could he embrace him? How did he, when he looked at this man who's responsible for so much death and suffering, and he was put in a prison camp, a labor camp, and so how could he embrace him? Well, if you look at a person through God's eyes, you say, well, you are like me. You are God's child. God's spirit is in you. And you're my brother. So I can only overcome these differences by loving my enemy. That's the only way. And so we can say that with true love, there is no separation. With true love. That is what Jesus did. That is what Father did, and this is what Mother is doing, and this is what we should do. And it's very, very difficult, but love has the power. So even if we see a person we don't like, that's our limitation. God loves that person. So if you see through the eyes of God, there's no separation. And with that, I'd like to say thank you for listening.